This is your weeknight soup recipe when you want something hearty and very sustaining, but you don't have a lot of time. Hi, I'm Melissa Clark. I'm a food reporter for the New York Times, and I'm here in the NYT Cooking kitchen studio to make lemony white bean soup with turkey and greens. It has canned white beans, any kind you want, in a rich lemony broth that has a little bit of cumin. It has some tomato paste to give it body and color, and then it has ground turkey, and the ground turkey gives it a meatiness and a heft. And then at the end, we have greens, any kind of greens you want, and they add color and make it a one-pot meal. What's great about this soup is it's so versatile. The recipe is below, so if you want to cook along, you can join me, and let's get started. So remember I said you can use any type of greens? Well, I took that as an excuse to bring you all of the greens because I wanted to walk you through them a little bit. Broccoli rabe has it has like a mustardy bitterness, same as mustard greens. And what's great about that in the soup is that it really contrasts with the richness and the plushness of those white beans. Collard greens, they have a lot of substance. They're hearty, and if you're gonna use collard greens, you need to cook your soup for like 5 extra minutes, just because it takes a little more cooking to soften them. Kale is your all-purpose green, either the dinosaur or lacinato kale, or Tuscan kale, which cooks really quickly, cooks more quickly than the curly kale, which is kind of the typical roughly kale that you see when you think kale. Any of them would work. Honestly, we could just mix them up, but we're not going to. We're gonna pick one. All right, I'm gonna take a poll. What should we do? Derek, what kind of greens?
Broccoli rabe.
Matt, you're with me on the kale?
Yeah, actually same.
I'm gonna go broccoli rabe.
All right, 2 and 2, tie, okay. Oh my God, Caleb, you are. Which of the greens should we put into the soup? And called it for a kale. We're gonna use kale. You get your soup pot. Does not need to be a heavy Dutch oven. This is the kind of thing, any kind of allium is gonna be good. And we're gonna add the onions and the carrots first. The garlic cooks pretty quickly, so we wanna add that later so it doesn't burn. Pinch of salt. Not that that's in the recipe, but I always add a pinch of salt when I'm sweating my vegetables. It just kind of gets it going a little faster. So basically this step is to put a little bit of color on the vegetables. I want them to be tender, and I want a little bit of a gold color, and I want to build flavor. This needs like 5 minutes. The onion is tender. You can see that it's turned golden. You can see the pot has turned golden too, which is nice because all of that golden stuff on the bottom of the pot is going to dissolve into the broth and give us lots of flavor. The tomato paste, you want to cook it for just a minute. So I'm going to just break it up with my spoon, and I want it to turn a darker shade of red, like a brick red instead of bright red. When you toast it, it adds a sort of an earthy note too, which is great. So, okay, red pepper and cumin. So the red pepper and the cumin is getting toasted along with the tomato paste, and then I'm going to add it fresh right before serving, and then it just gives like a hit of spice, which is nice. Okay, so you can see tomato paste is well distributed and a little bit darker. So the recipe calls, annoyingly, for half a pound of ground turkey, and you know how you buy it and it's in those pound containers. So if you want to use the whole pound, it becomes lemony white bean and turkey stew. It just gets a little bit meatier, which is fine. It's delicious. I've done it that way many times. And so I have my garlic and grated fresh ginger root. Ginger is bright, it's spicy, and it's very fresh tasting. And then I'm just gonna cook this for a few minutes just until I start to smell the garlic and the ginger and the turkey gets a little bit golden in spots. So if you don't wanna use ground turkey or you don't have ground turkey, this works with ground pork, ground chicken. If you wanna make it vegetarian and leave out the meat entirely, it is still very delicious. Maybe add a little bit of extra oil for a little richness, and it's perfect. More salt. You can see that turkey is browned in spots. So these are just canned butter beans. You can use white bean, cannellini, navy, any kind of white bean, any kind of any bean, really. I always drain my canned beans and then I give them a rinse under the sink just to get rid of that canned flavor. And my chicken broth. You could use turkey broth, you could use vegetable broth. You really could use water and extra salt too, because there's so much flavor already in the pot, but broth makes it extra delicious. So I'm gonna bring this to a simmer, And I'm just gonna let it simmer for about 15, 20 minutes. You want it to reduce and the flavors to come together. You want the turkey to get really tender. So just do it on low heat. If you like a very thick broth, you can take your wooden spoon and just smash a few beans on the side of the pot, and then they're gonna release their starch and add body to the broth. Let this chill for 15 minutes. And then we'll make our bean decision. This is my kale. It is all washed. The thing about lacinato kale, it's so easy to clean because you can just take your hand and just go straight down like that. I love that. It just makes it so easy. And then just tear it into, you're just looking for bite-sized pieces. I know people save these and do things with the kale stems. I haven't quite gotten there. I compost them. I don't use them. Any of you want to tell me what you do with them? Please put it in the comments. You just want to cook this down until the flavors come together. It should taste delicious, and often if it tastes a little weak, it just needs more simmering. So give it a taste, and if it's like, okay, yum, I want to eat this now, then it is ready. Yeah, it's really good. It does need a little salt, but the flavors they're integrated, they're good. So I'm gonna, a little pinch of salt, and my greens. It looks like a lot of greens, but they cook down. You know how greens are. So many of them come to the party and then they just get smaller and smaller. So while that simmers for the last minute or two, we have our garnishes. I know they're garnishes, they go in at the end, but they're actually integral parts of the soup. They really bring it together. More salt, probably. We're still gonna need a little more salt because we added the kale, which needs seasoning. A little bit of lemon juice for brightness. I'm gonna probably add a little more cumin and a little more red pepper, like I was saying, just to make the flavors pop right at the end, even though it's already in the soup. And then my herbs. This, I know, it's a lot of herbs, and I want there to be a lot of herbs because the herbs are also adding a different kind of green flavor. Feel free to just use one. At home, I usually just use cilantro or dill. Those are the two things I have on hand. But you can use parsley and mint and basil and chives and tarragon. Tarragon is really nice in this soup, actually, as a part of the mix. I'm just gonna throw them in. And you want to throw them in, and then you want to give it a minute for them to kind of wilt along with the greens. So, teeny bit more salt, a squeeze or two of lemon. You want to be generous with the lemon because it's called lemony white bean soup, so it has to make its presence known. This is really thick. This is beautiful. This is almost like a stew. If you wanted it to be a little bit thinner, you could add a bit more broth or a little bit of water. Just add a little bit of red pepper and a little bit of cumin, and it is ready. Now the best part of every video is where I get to eat the thing I made. I love this soup. The herbs really come through, and the herbs really suffuse the broth. There's the cumin, a little bit of chili, the lemon is so bright, and you know, those beans are just velvety. This is a family favorite. We all love it. Eating it just makes me feel like I'm home. Best feeling in the world. Bread is really good. I highly recommend it. You all should eat bread. You can find this recipe and so many others at nytcooking.com, or the recipe is right below.